when I talked about the Indianapolis Colts in my preview in last year in July, a lot of their 2022 was going to be dependent on how newly traded quarterback Matt Ryan performed. You already had most of the team coming back from 2021. It was just a matter of who's going to be the quarterback, because you shipped off Carson Wentz to the Washington Commanders, and we all know how their season ended last year when they had a playoff opportunity on the line. So you're going into 2022 seeing how Matt Ryan could do on a new team. And not only that, it seemed like it looked poised for the taking, that they could potentially usurp, at least somewhat kind of surpass the Tennessee Titans as, at least for this season, the team to beat in the AFC South. And I think I predicted them to do just that in 2022. Boy, was I wrong about that. Boy, was I absolutely wrong about this one, like by a long mile, because the team vastly underperformed with Matt Ryan under center from the very start. From game one against the Houston Texans. Why is that? Well, because opposing defenses easily focused on Jonathan Taylor, their top running back, and that made the offense very one-dimensional. It forced Matt Ryan, who looked like cooked. He looked washed. I'm sorry to say it. He couldn't move. He could barely move around the pocket. He was turning the ball over more frequently than usual, and he was under duress a lot. He ate so many sacks, mainly due to the underwhelming offensive line. So the Indianapolis Colts were underwhelming so bad. Ryan was having a very disappointing year. Very disappointing first couple of games of the season. He was getting benched after a Week 7 game against the Tennessee Titans. Frank Reich, the head coach, would make one last pull, one last desperation play that saw Sam Ellinger, the backup, start what ended up being Frank Reich's last game before he ended up getting fired after they were hammered by the New England Patriots in Week 9. So my question was, like, you had Nick Foles on the roster. Why didn't you start Nick Foles? Nick Fails, Fails. It's like you had Nick Foles there too with Matt Ryan. Like, why didn't you start Nick Fails? I don't know, this team, man. So anyway, you fired Frank Reich mid-season, even though his coaching, it wasn't great, but you didn't really have a quarterback to work with. The offensive line was really underperforming. But rather than replace Frank Reich with someone on his staff, owner Jim Irsay did something really out of the box. It actually made for some interesting TV. He instead hired someone with absolutely no head coaching experience. So he pretty much did what the Texans almost did in last year's offseason. He hired a head coach with none experience whatsoever. He hired ESPN analyst Jeff Saturday. Yes, that is right. Former Indianapolis Colts offensive lineman Jeff Saturday. So everyone was shocked. Everyone's appalled. Even everyone at ESPN, Jeff Saturday's coworkers were shocked by this. They were kind of supportive, but they were disappointed by the Colts for doing this kind of move. But I mean, hey, the Colts somehow managed to win their next game against the Raiders. That was kind of more so of the Raiders embarrassing themselves. But unsurprisingly, they lost the rest of their games, including giving up the largest lead in NFL regular season history against the Minnesota Vikings, 33-0, which also included Matt Ryan participating in. That is so sad to have Matt Ryan be a part of two of the largest blown leads in not just Super Bowl history, but now regular season history. Like, that is so sad, dude. So Nick Fails would start the final 3 games of the regular season, but not even he could make the offense manageable. and the Colts would finish 4-12-1. Man, that is just sad to see. So, at least for the Colts, they put themselves in position for a top 4 pick in the NFL draft. But do you really expect general manager Chris Ballard to actually do something reliable with that pick? We'll see. And I don't know if they picked the right head coach in former Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen. I mean, he did work with Jalen Hurts, a MVP candidate. But then again, we don't know how he'll translate from a coordinator to a head coach. He had a decade of offensive coaching experience with working with Phillip Rivers, Justin Herbert, and again, Jalen Hurts. But this is his first head coaching gig. Going from coordinator to head coach is a lot different. But hey, I guess it's kind of a slight improvement over Jeff Saturday. They almost chose Jeff Saturday to be the permanent head coach. Like, good God. So at least they kind of got a decent choice. But expectations are already high for Steichen because Jim Irsay gave him a big fat contract, a 6-year contract. Like what is it with these first time head coaches getting big fat contracts for their rebuild? Like damn. And they don't even have that much money to work with it to start off this kind of rebuild-ish. $11 million. Not a lot to spend there. But they can actually get a good chunk. They can add on to it, a good amount of it to add on, because the team can get an additional $17 million by releasing Matt Ryan, or if Matt Ryan retires. So if Matt Ryan retires or the Colts release him, they get $17 million, and they'll get around like at least $28 million. They can also save an additional $14 million by releasing Ryan Kelly and slot corner Kenny Moore. They can find replacements for both of those guys anyway. Looking at some of your key free agents for the Colts, defensive end Yannick Ngakoue, who was a trade piece from the Raiders last year, and free safety Rodney McLeod. So not too many key free agents. I'm not sure if the Colts will want to re-sign them back. Either way, if they don't, they can always find replacements for them. Not too significant. So looking at some of their needs to address, obviously the biggest need for the Colts, just like it was last year, is a freaking quarterback. You're in prime position to pick a quarterback in the NFL draft. You're picking number 4 overall. You have a prime opportunity to pick the second best prospect. Whatever the Texans don't pick, you can get the next best thing. Their draft strategy should be getting a quarterback of the future. Whether it's CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or whatever the next best quarterback is. They cycled through several different quarterbacks in the last 5 years after Andrew Luck retired, and none of them worked. It's time to settle on something long-term. Jim Irsay, Chris Ballard, wake the fuck up. It's time to settle on something long-term. Get your head out of your ass. Now, obviously, a lot of it will depend on when in the top 4 they will address it, because of what Chicago does with the number 1 overall pick, and whether or not the Colts want to trade up and get their guy right away. Either way, their main focus has to be on getting a quarterback locked in for the future. Not after the draft, not before the draft, but the veteran quarterback in the NFL draft. And then you use the other remaining picks of your draft to build around that future quarterback. Once they acquired the quarterback, they can use the rest of their picks to address supporting him, getting another receiver alongside Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, getting a center, getting a couple more tackles along the exterior, maybe even getting a guard. So you got to address pretty much the whole offense this whole draft. Maybe getting a couple of more depth at corner and linebacker too could help. It could go a long way. So for the Colts, their disastrous 2022, and stupid as well, as anyone could have imagined, it can help them depending on how Jim Irsay handles it. I mean, he has no one to blame but himself for the mess that he caused. And for whatever reason, he elected to keep Chris Ballard along as general manager, even though his assembly of a roster is part of the reason why the Colts are in this big mess. Why didn't Jim Irsay fire Chris Ballard alongside when he fired Frank Reich mid-season? Why didn't he even fire Chris Ballard at the end of the season? It doesn't make any sense. So, well, the past is in the past now, but this is Chris Ballard's last chance to Avengers assemble a competent roster, and it's, well, he may have attained what we don't know yet, a competent head coach for now that seems to know what he's doing. So all I'll say is that if the Colts roster that shows up on opening day next season resembles the one that's either this bad as it was in 2022 or somehow even worse than the one that presented itself this year or this past year at least, then honestly, I don't know when the Colts are going to wake the hell up. Maybe they won't even ever. The horseshoe will just stay flat in the face on its sand forever and ever. Amen.